people can see these are line item, you know,
Right.
in one page. So they're going through the budget, they're going through the allocate. I mean, one of the things is, you know, within the process, I mean, we can't budget over here and spend over there. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
I mean, and anybody who thinks it does, it just doesn't. If town meeting appropriates X for X department, then that's what X department can spend. I mean, in some communities, you know, they never mind. But what's appropriated at town meeting, that's what they can do. Now, you know, there are certain parameters or certain budgets where they have more flexibility than others, but, and it depends how you make the motion on the appropriation. And that's the other reason that sometimes they collapse departments or summarize budgets or whatever, so that there's more flexibility. But, I mean, we can get as granular as we want to.
Yeah, I just think it's important that
Yeah.
we know if money was appropriated for account A, it was spent account A, and make sure we understand that everything that goes into account A.
Why doesn't everybody go through this and please call me and I'll help you with any part of it, and then as we go through the budget, you know, if there's reports in here that you like, mark them up and let me know so that we can talk to Tom and George. And again, this would be part of the discussion when the state comes in as part of this review that they're doing. As you each meet with them, is to say, well, you know, what are other communities, can you, they may not put it in the report, but you can certainly, as you meet with them, what do other communities do, how do they do it, Mr. Almond.
Thank you, Bruce. Bob Armquist, 28 Relay. I think this is great that the town is doing an audit. I think it's certainly past due, and the shame is that we weren't able to kick it off like in July or something like that. But I do have two questions on the audit. One is the timing. I mean, when is a thoughtful report going to be done, assuming this thing gets kicked off pretty quickly? And then secondly, what do we expect the output to be? I've heard a lot of discussion on, you know, rewriting the accounting and sort of having a better explanation of where the money went, but I don't really hear an actionable, like, insight that we can use to drive the process differently. Maybe there is, and I just haven't heard it, but I want to know if you could answer both of those questions.
The first, we're not contracting for any additional audit.
Okay.
So let me just, the issue was raised, you know, could we do an audit? The issue I'm raising is we have an audit, and it's done every year, and it produces a set of financial statements and a set of financial reports. But again, that's part of that is driven by, you know, if you will, the back office and how we do the accounting and so forth. So, I mean, I think really what we're looking at is how do we change the budget process? How do we change the way we present the information? Because the end result, the information's not going to change. The total budget's not going to change. You know, much of what is spent in various categories isn't necessarily going to change, although it may. But that we need to change the way that we present the data, the way that we put the data together, so that people can clearly understand what's being spent for what. So there's no, so I guess just to dispel that up front,
Okay.
there's no audit being done. We have an annual audit that's done. It's budgeted for every year. We have an audit firm come in, and you know they do it according to government principles, and they provide us, just like any firm, we get a management letter and all of those things. Those are a matter of public record. So the audited financial statements for the town of North Reading are available to any resident who wants to read them. I think the management letter, is the management letter public record? No. I'm not sure if the management, I'm not sure if the management letter is a matter of public record. So we have a set of audited financial statements, but how do we get from that to, you know, again, to Mr. Callagy's point, you can't give this to the resident and expect them to read it, you know, with all its accompanying footnotes. And so what we're really talking about, I think, is how do we modify the process? And how do we make the numbers meaningful, understandable to everyone, so that when they look at the number, they know what it means, they know what it costs, they know what the impact is. And then how do we, and back to the issue of revenue, to present the revenue to the community and have the community approve the revenue at town meeting as well, so that they're fully aware and cognizant of what the revenue is, where the revenue comes from, and they can see, because you can do it all on one page, they can see how it's being allocated, so that you can see on a pie chart, these are my revenue sources, these are my expenditure sources, and this is how it breaks out on the chart, so they can have meaningful numbers, which is really how we put the budget together and how we present the budget in the warrant. That's separate and apart from a different issue, which is we are embarking on a process which we've just begun to look at how we compare to other communities. And it's also tied into the fact that we're bringing the state in. They're going to start sometime this week to do a financial management review. What do we do good? What do we do bad? How do other communities do it? You know, what have you seen in other communities, et cetera? So what are the sort of best practices? That particular review is at no charge to the community, and it provides a great value. And gets us back some of our state tax dollars. So I don't know if that
answers my question. It's very disappointing to hear that you guys aren't doing something more than that, but at this point it's probably...
Something more than that in terms of...
Well, I mean, maybe it's a different definition of audit, but...
But I share Mr. Callaghan's frustration that the town is being torn apart with people using different numbers and picking and choosing to make different political points. And that's because there's apples and oranges. Every town accounts for their costs in different ways. Some people put school department retirement money here, and some people put it here, and we put it wherever we put it. When you add the numbers up and you sort of divide it by department, and you try to compare it with a state number, depending on the number you look at, some places it looks like we're spending too much in the schools, and other ones it says that we're the lowest in the state in the schools. And likewise for police, for fire, for DPW. And I don't see anybody asking the tough questions as to what should we be spending in this town, given a town our size. And maybe this benchmarking process will go through it, but I'd like for everybody to agree on a single set of apples to apples numbers that we can compare against towns that are comparative size. It says this is what we should be spending, and you know what, this money here, this is money we probably don't need to spend for a town our size, and these other things, here's 12 areas where we're not investing enough.
Well,
and I don't hear these questions being asked.
well,
Maybe this other study
will.
will.
That's part of what the comparative analysis or benchmarking will be, which is not on our agenda tonight.
Right.
And we've just begun that process. We've selected a group of communities that we're going to compare ourselves to. We're beginning the comparison process. And the first part of that process, the first leg of that journey, and absent completion of this leg to successful fruition, the journey will stop, is to understand where those DOR numbers come from, and did they equalize across all the communities, or did they just take the community's budget and put it into a DOR database? I'm going to guess that they equalize across the communities in some way, and that getting the answer to that question helps to solve a piece of the puzzle for North Reading, so that when people look at the numbers, it means something. If they don't equalize it, then we're not going to use the data, and if anybody brings the data to our attention, we're going to say the data is meaningless, because it's not apples to apples, it's apples and oranges. So either the data is equalized, or it isn't. Whether we're talking about DOR numbers or DOE numbers, is that equalized? If they're just taking a budget as approved by a community and using it for that input, I'm sure they're not.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're equalizing. They're using a formula they're using criteria that certain factors are not in the equation. And I don't know what those factors are. I haven't met anybody in my travels yet who does. I can tell you that I'm searching to get the answers to what those factors are, and this board will search to get the answers to those factors, and we'll understand how DOR presents that data so that we can compare North Reading to other communities. So that's the first leg of the journey. And again, absent completion of that successfully, we really can't go further. We can't compare ourselves to other communities. And having said all that, I'm also a firm believer that comparison to other communities based on how they spend or what they spend is not, while valuable and useful to know and useful as a tool in budgeting, it's not the total answer, and it's also based on the priorities of the community and how the community wants to allocate, so that the different goals and the different priorities of the different communities we compare ourselves against. So that won't show up in the numbers. But if community A is more interested in elderly, and community B is more interested in parks and recreation, it might show a little bit in the numbers, but it's not going to be the whole answer. So it's a piece of the puzzle. It's a tool to use to measure, to evaluate, to compare, and to get us a read on where we are. Because you're right. You can, and you know what? They're just numbers. They're just numbers. So.
But it's our tax dollars.
No, I understand that. I understand that. But in some respects, sometimes someone can say, well, what do you want the number to be?
But that's the way we've done the budgeting process for years.
What?
Years last year, let's add 3%, and then let's fight about it in April. And somebody's got to step back.
You know what? I will vehemently disagree that that's how the budget process was conducted. And maybe it was in years past, but it certainly was not
Okay.
last year. And that the budget process this year will change yet again from what it was last year. And different departments budget in different ways. And again, I'm off the agenda now, and I'm off
Sorry, I'm interrupting. Sorry.
the audit. I'd be glad to talk to you privately, because I think there is a lot happening, and I think there is a lot of change afoot. And but you can't turn a tanker on a dime. And we have a town to run, and we have the interest of all residents to serve. And I would say that things will be different. Although it may be the same result, nobody likes it.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Kelly.
if I could, with the audit itself, then I'm going to try to summarize this in my understanding of what we discussed.
Yes,
here
please
tonight.
do.
That the audit is already done on a yearly basis. There's already an audit done, but are we in some sort of an agreement that the audit being done needs to be categorized, or the categories in that, the final analysis, like that page 6 we're talking about, we need to do a little bit of changing there to be able to better represent what we're talking about when we start talking about being able to compare apples to apples, where we kind of pull some pieces in from different places and put them where they actually are. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and.
Is that a fair assessment? I mean.
Yes, but that doesn't come from an audit.
No, what I'm saying is we have the audit, but the way in which the audit is now presented, and probably due to the way we keep the books.
If we change
Makes
the way
it-
we do the budget, then the presentation of the audit will be
Okay, that's what I guess I'm getting at then. So we are sort of in an agreement then, that we do need to change the way we do it, even though we already have one.
different. At least.
So we don't need another one, but we need
Yeah.
the yearly audit, but maybe we need it in a different format, or we need to budget in a different manner, so that when the audit comes in and it categorizes these different departments and so forth, it's gonna be more to the point of where money's actually being spent. Is that fair to say?
That's my